Welcome, guys.
Welcome.
Episode 7, Skunk Ape podcast. Today, I'm back.
He's
Took a
back.
little bit of a break, but I'm back. I'm back. Um, glad, glad Gavin still got to have an episode last week. I really missed out on the opportunity to talk puffers because it's one of
Oh
my
yeah,
favorite,
we're gonna
one
definitely
of
have
my
to
favorite fish.
have him
Um,
on.
and the morning geckos. That's pretty cool too. Um,
Electric Blues.
so Yeah, electric. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I guess they're electric blues. They're day geckos, not morning geckos. There's a difference. That's great. So,
Yeah, I'm excited for today's topic. I mean, I don't think many people are really going in depth of captive born and bred versus captive bred versus wild caught versus farm bred. Let's go into. I want to go into all of it.
yeah, and it's funny because I mean we're 10 years apart, right?
hmm
Or I think 10 years apart,
I'm
or maybe
22.
more. Huh?
I said I'm 22.
Okay, so we're 16 years apart now that I'm 38. Um, so I mean, growing up, we never, or when I first started, we never saw any. It was never really captive bred
hmm
or wild caught. Nobody ever asked those questions. It was just kind of like everything was cheap. Get what you wanted.
Yeah.
Get cool stuff. Um,
What was the
and you
first like captive bred animal that you can remember that you saw and like you're like, whoa, that like when did you notice like captive bred kind of becoming a thing? Because I know you've been in it for a while.
well, growing up in Florida, I mean, you did have your for one, I knew an importer. Um, he was my uncle's next door neighbor, so he imported stuff. Um, Kind of the first time I ever
hmm
saw a retake was with him. Um, so I got to see a lot of cool imports, and by cool imports, I mean it was like Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon. The video game came out, so he was importing hedgehogs and prairie dogs, things like that. But he
Huh.
did get some snakes and stuff. Um, but honestly, I mean, when I was a kid and really getting into it, I can't say that I really recall seeing any captive bred stuff until I started working at my first pet store. When people would come in, they're like, "Yeah, I got some bearded dragons," and I was 17, 18 at the time,
hmm
and I just bred some bearded dragons, and I need to offload them. And there was a lot of people doing it, and it almost discouraged me from doing it. But they would come in and, yeah, I'm going to sell them all. Well, I can. Somebody else just came in and offered me some, so I'll give you $50 for the lot,
Oh wow.
and get like 12 for $50,
Damn.
right?
hmm
And I mean, they were nothing special. I mean, they were just bland dragons. Um, and I don't even remember on my wholesale list if it even said wild caught versus captive bred. I mean, I was getting jungle carpet pythons for, I was selling them for $200.
Oh wow.
Um, and then we had one of my
What
customers.
year?
He
What
had
year
a
was this?
2003 through 2004.
So those the carpets would have anything Australian at that point would have had to have been captive bred.
No, I don't think so.
Because I'm pretty sure
I
that
don't know
ban
when.
the export ban was in like the 80s, 70s or 80s. It was a
Was
while
it?
ago. I thought so,
Well,
but I may be wrong. I'll pop up the
well,
information on the screen.
no. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that would probably would be a question we could ask Chris and stuff. But because I know he, at some point, I thought he was able to import lace monitors. Um,
Really?
yeah, I think maybe it was an import from Europe or something like that.
Mm,
But I mean, jungle carpets. But again, nothing was labeled as anything other than
the animal.
the animal. So, um, so I couldn't tell you. Aside from like the bearded dragons, there were a couple tortoise breeders
Yeah,
in Florida.
I think I got like even when I was getting into this the reptile scene, like and started looking into like the captive keeping side, like even then stuff wasn't really being labeled. It wasn't until like I'd say the past 8 years, eight maybe 10 years, where I've noticed people labeling captive born and bred versus wild caught.
Right.
But like before then, I think people would just shit. Before then, people weren't even caring about pictures. They just put the animal on the price list, name, price,
Well,
scientific name, good to go.
yeah, I mean, and that's how kingsnake.com used to be. Is it's just like I have a description. This is what it is. Okay. And I guess my first time, I think it was 2000. I think it was 2005 was when I first went to the Breeders' Expo, and everything was supposed to be captive bred there. Um, but you could always go to a booth and be like, "Hey, so I think I talked about this, and I went there, and my buddy's like, "Give me a cobalt blue tarantula."
Yeah,
I was
you
like,
did talk
"Okay."
about this in one of the episodes.
And and it was like, "Yeah, well, go to this table. He's got some." And I was like, "Hey, man, you got some?" And it's like, "Yeah." You got cash? I was like, "Yeah, why?" He goes, "Oh, well, I'm not supposed to sell this here." I'm like, "Then why do you have it?" So it kind of makes me wonder at the Breeders' Expo when I mean, it's the National Breeders' Expo. It's supposed to be all captive bred stuff.
Nowadays, people have import ship in there.
Yeah, which I think defeats the whole purpose of it.
I agree.
Uh, and it definitely makes me wonder how long have they actually had wild caught stuff out there and
Yeah.
actually been selling it as captive bred.
And like
Um,
that does a lot of harm in the community. I feel like falsely selling a captive bred, like it might not seem like a big deal, but like to people who actually put in the work and breed these animals, it takes a lot of work. I get it. You ball python people watching, it's easy to breed a ball python, but when you dive into like any of the species that like Chad and I are working with, or anyone else is working with, like the shit takes effort and time. Like it's not something that you can just throw a label on. Like import animals come in with tons of health issues.
yeah,
It
and,
sucks.
and and that's part of the thing with the import animals is yeah they could have parasites and stuff, but I almost think that I mean, and you're talking to someone who's had Savannah monitors, Nile monitors that were clearly all imported. Um, because back when I had them, nobody was talking about breeding Savannahs or
Mm-hmm.
breeding or breeding Niles. Um, and really the knowledge wasn't there up until recently about how you should really keep Niles and Savannahs. I mean, where you
Yeah,
can go pick them up at an expo for $20 for a Savannah monitor and $40 for a Nile. I mean, everybody's buying. Oh, look, I get this big mean lizard, so I want it. And that's where part of it is education is really important when it
mm-hmm.
comes to it. But yeah, I mean, I think there's pros and cons to wild caught.
Yeah. Let's get into
Uh,
that. Let's get into like what are your pros and cons for wild caught animals, and I'll go into mine and
so my
explain our
my biggest
differences.
con with wild caught animals is one how I mean conservation is the biggest, right? So we're going out into the wild and we're grabbing these sometimes babies, sometimes adults.
Mm-hmm.
How are we actually affecting the breeding population? I mean, I know that they've shut down. They've shut down. Like Africa's not totally shut down, but they've shut down leopard tortoises and sulcatas, and they did that a while ago. Uh, but the conservation issue is, you go in there and you have all of these animals that are getting taken, and I'm sure there's a quota of some sort that you're allowed to have.
Yeah.
But in seeing how they breed in captivity, knowing how I mean, just with monitors, for example, 240 days for some of these monitor species to incubate. I mean, and you're talking about importing in hundreds, if not thousands, of these things
Yeah.
every year.
There's a graph I'll have to throw up that's been posted, and it shows the amount of animals brought, like amount of like let's just say monitors as an example, like Asian water monitors,
Yeah,
um, that have like just been brought in for pet trade purposes versus like skin trade and all that. Because the pet trade is a huge thing, but does like we do bring in a lot of animals, but people are fucking importing by the
Right.
millions these animals for like the skin trade, and like it's just disheartening. Like if you're gonna do the skin trade stuff, like at least breed them. Like at least breed them yourself. Like I
Yeah.
disagree with it, but
Um,
importing them in by the millions is in the
right.
hundreds of thousands is not right.
Yeah. No. I mean, like I said, conservation is probably the biggest. Um, but then you also have your. Uh, I just lost my train. You have the parasites, the disease that you
Yeah.
bring in, right? So imagine having a collection of various different, like say, coming guy and um, celebensis and I mean T plus T neg water monitors, and you just bring it in and don't quarantine it, don't do anything, don't treat it. You could potentially transmit whatever diseases that guy just came from overseas with right into your stockpile,
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
and you just ruined your entire stockpile.
Yep.
Um, but I think, well, let's go into your cons of wild caught, and
Well,
then
would
we'll
that
talk
be
about.
would that be your only
No,
con? Your only cons would be those two.
I mean, no, those are my two biggest ones.
Yeah, I want to. We'll save the whole quarantine conversation for a little bit later in this episode because that'll be a
Yeah,
whole conversation. But
yeah.
what are list them all. I want to hear all your that you can think of off the top of your head.
There's a lot. I mean, I don't know. The other thing is I know that like where these people are going to catch these things.
Mm-hmm.
For one, I guarantee the people that are going to catch these things are not getting paid well in any
Oh
way, shape, or
hell
form.
no.
Right? It's like it's like learning how saltwater fish get collected, and I guess we could throw saltwater fish in here too because I mean there we have decimated the population of saltwater fish to where saltwater fish are insanely expensive because but they actually use cyanide and put
Really?
it in the water to stun the fish.
Whoa.
Yeah, yeah.
What the hell?
And
I didn't know that.
yeah, and I forget there used to be like you can go into some really good saltwater stores, and the um, I forget the stamp that they would put on their tanks,
Mm-hmm.
but it was basically those fish were all caught by divers with nets. Like they would go down with a net, scoop the fish up, put it in a bag,
Oh.
dive down, scoop the fish up, and as opposed to using poisons and stuff. So even with saltwater fish, you have these saltwater fish that are doing their thing, and you basically poison them to sell them back to a place. So quarantine your fish.
Yeah.
I mean, back to the puffer thing. But I don't know if I've talked about my Fahaka puffer that I had,
No, I didn't know
but
you had a Fahaka.
yeah, I had a Fahaka puffer. His name was Boo. He was awesome, except for the fact that they are probably the most territorial and like nothing can live with them.
Yeah.
They just like to eat everything, and they love corridors. I found
Mm-hmm.
out the hard way. Like I was like, oh, corridors are fast and they're small. They won't do anything. Put him in there. They were there for like a week, and then I saw him notice them. He'd go down there.
Oh my gosh, that's
But
crazy.
so Fahaka puffers are from the Nile River,
Mm-hmm.
and they actually dive down to deep depths to breed, and you can't really keep two Fahaka puffers in a tank together because they'll kill each other.
Yeah, we were talking about that on the episode with Mitchell. Like,
Yeah,
we were talking about like breeding Fahakas and Nabus and the big puffers, like how it's very
yes,
hard to do because like
and
they're from the. He
and
was
it's
saying
like
I think the depth of the river they're from is 150 feet deep.
yep. So they dive these extreme depths, and I think I read somewhere where somebody had finally got some Fahakas to breed.
Yeah,
Whether or not anything happened out of that, I don't know. Um, but they finally got two Fahakas to breed in captivity.
yeah. He was
But
saying Fahakas and Nabus have been bred a couple times, and as of the
yeah,
past couple, as of like 2 or 3 years ago, someone bred someone up in Ohio, surprisingly. in the United States bred cross rivers.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I mean, even those with a Fahaka, I mean, I could buy. I used to pre-COVID, I could buy a baby Fahaka puffer for $20.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah,
Holy
and that was
crap!
back in Oregon. But yeah, $20 all day long. I could get a Fahaka puffer.
Wow.
Um, and and they're good. They're a great looking puffer that don't need. I mean, let's be real. They need a 6 foot tank, but it's not a Mabu puffer where you need 1,000 gallons to really make that thing comfortable.
Mm.
I mean, look at Corey's that I guess just passed away. He had him in a 300 gallon, then had him in a 600 gallon, and I don't even know what he was in at the end of the day. But the Mabus are nice because they're so big they don't really eat other fish because they're just like, I'm too lazy to go after that.
Yeah.
Um, but even with puffers too is like especially pea puffers and things like that. You really have to treat them for um, you have to treat them for parasites.
Yeah.
I mean, like pretty much anything. It's like instantly treat them for parasites. Um, so, but yeah, all these people that are going out and catching these animals, they're not making any money. You know, it's like why not just have a sweat factory in I mean, it's just not. It's no different than working in a shoe factory in Malaysia or something like that. But then again, everybody knows that listens that are reptile breeders. Um, they well, we don't make money. Let's be real. We don't make money. We do it because it's passionate.
Yeah.
It's not because we make money. Um, and it's I mean, unless we end up with like the world's first of something, then you're gonna make some little bit of money, but that's usually like a ball python guy that says, "Hey, well, I was telling you, like Breeders' Expo. The first time I went to the Breeders' Expo, somebody sold a leucistic ball python for $100,000,
Yeah.
and now a leucistic ball python are a dime a dozen, and you can pick one up for probably $300-400.
Yeah.
And
Crazy.
so those kind of things.
Yeah, I think my biggest cons would be definitely parasites. I mean, I think parasites. I think that's got to be one of the biggest ones. Like, they come in messed up, and not even that. Like the way they get shipped and the way they get handled and held and transported, it's really fucked up too. Like really fucked up. I know with like soft shell turtles, they dry them up and like keep them in towels. It fucks them up. Like it's very hard to keep alive a lot of these imports. And then with that, like I think a big factor that plays with it is beginners tend to always go towards imports because they're cheaper. And I think because of that, it leaves a lot of bad taste in people's mouths. So I think that's a huge reason in my eyes why I think Captain Born and Bred should be, encouraged more. More people need to start working with it because beginners need to like start learning. Hey, I should go with this more expensive animal. These imports are in my eyes. Those are for experienced keepers. I think experienced keepers should be getting imports, and beginners should be getting captive bred.
Correct. I would definitely agree with that.
Mm-hmm. And then like another thing is like people like I don't think people realize that these importers, these guys that are going out and catching these animals and then like shipping them out and selling them, they're just gonna label it whatever the hell sells more. Like these certain locales, like there's some locales. Like don't get me wrong, there's definitely localities that you can look at the animal and you cannot deny that's what it is.
Right.
But there is a lot of locales where it's like, oh, this could be a couple different options, and the importer's just gonna, all right, this is the most expensive option. Let's label it that, ship it out. They're gonna do.
That probably happens more in the Indicus complex than anything too.
I think the most common thing that happens with is the green tree python community.
Yeah. They're trying to make their money in the best way they can.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and even then, obviously they're making some kind of money but there's always somebody that's making more money than them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's.
Now, do you consider farm bred animals, like let's say a farm bred animal bred in Indonesia shipped over the U.S. Do you consider that captive born and bred?
Well, it's not captive born and bred.
Do you consider it captive? Like, would you? What would you label it? I personally would consider it like I would. I guess technically be farm bred, but I just call them imports. I consider them one and the same.
No, yeah, and I would say the same thing about I know there's this people down in Florida that have released veiled chameleons
Mm,
pockets, and they go out there and they collect the babies and stuff, and they breed out there,
yeah,
but they go and collect the babies and sell them as.
yeah. I consider those wild caught as well.
I think they sell them as. I think they sell them as native wild caught.
Interesting.
I think that's how I've seen them sold as native
Interesting.
wild caught. But yeah, anything that you are not personally raising, you do not personally know every piece of food that is going into that animal, and I say that, and I mean you can't guarantee everything because, especially with big walk-in cages, and if you have a reptile building, you are going to have some kind of bug.
Oh,
Period. You're gonna have some
100%.
kind of
The tents have bugs. I
so
got jumping spiders in this tent with my rhino iguana.
so you can't say yeah I know everything that goes in, but you know the majority of it. Like you live in Florida, there's palmetto bugs.
Oh,
They
yeah.
get into your house.
Mm.
Guess what? They're probably going to get into one of your enclosures because they fit everywhere, and your animal's going to go like, "Ooh, roach, yum." But no, I mean, any, let's just anything that's not born in an incubator where someone has, or not even in an incubator. If we're talking all things, if it's not produced by someone
In a cage?
in from a cage, a tank, a contained area within a facility that is
Under
designed
human
to
control.
yes, that's under human control. Well, but you can say that about a farm, one of the big farms, like where a lot of these. I mean, you have these savannas where they go and catch um, gravid females, and then
Well,
they
yeah.
shake
With
it.
that, like, what do you think about like captive hatched animals, like females that come into the states, gravid, they lay the eggs, someone incubates them, like those are like it's a little bit better than an import in my eyes, but like I mean, those animals are still F1s, and F1s can still carry the same parasites that the
Yeah,
zeros did, and
yeah, and
just
I
as
don't
many
see.
issues.
I don't know if the parasites can, as far as reptiles wise, I don't know if the parasites can penetrate the eggs and all that stuff, and actually they
I
can actually be born with parasites.
I've heard
Or
from multiple people that they can.
okay, see, that's just something I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to speak on it. I don't know. I mean,
That's what I've
but
always been told. If I'm wrong, someone correct me. But I've always been
yeah,
told. I guess it also probably depends on species, but like we'll say a majority of them can
yeah.
pass
I mean,
parasites.
it makes sense on both sides of things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wouldn't doubt it that they do, but at the same time, it's like maybe they don't. So that's where I kind of stand of maybe they're okay, maybe they're not. But then again, you do have people that will say, "Oh, I imported." Well, like your chameleon, for example. Um, if she really is crapping and she lays eggs, there are some people that will label those as a CBB animal, captive born and bred.
Which
Well,
is
they're not.
wrong.
They're just captive. Right. They're just captive born. So in order for them to be captive born and bred, you have to have the male and the female and produce them yourself.
Well, you would
Um,
have like for them to be captive born and bred. Would you? I've always been under the impression. I'm sorry, my cat is on top of one of the grow tents. I've always been under the impression that captive born and bred kind of meant that the parents were either captive hatched slash born or also CBB. Like I had the impression that they had to be captive as well.
see, my thought is if you like, um, well, I mean, look at Fox. He just was the first person to ever hatch Nile miners. right?
Mm-hmm.
First person to get hatch Nile money
In the world, I think.
in the world. Okay, well in the world,
Like,
even better. Good, go Rob. Um, but to me, that is a captive born and bred. Those
yeah.
those hatchlings are captive born and bred because he did the work. He got them to breed. He got the parents to breed. He therefore can claim they are captive born and bred animals. He bred them in captivity. They were born in captivity.
So what?
So
So then, what would the difference be? Cause say, what if those animals? I'm not saying Rob did this. I'm just saying someone else. Like, what if some like? Would you have to? Would you consider them? Like, would you say they have to be long-term captive and parasite-free for them to for their babies to be considered true captive born and bred? Because what if they're just fresh imports and they're just riddled with parasites? Put them together, they lock up, and you get lucky.
you are really lucky if that happens because the amount of stress and all that stuff. Yeah, and we're waiting to quarantine till later. But if you do that, you're extremely lucky for one.
Yeah, but I mean, there's it can happen.
It can. But unfortunately, I guess you could still say they're captive born and bred.
Yeah, I can
You
see
know,
that. Yeah,
it's like I also part of me doesn't like the term long term captive. Like
yeah, I want to
it's
get
still a
into
wild,
that too.
it's still a wild caught animal.
What do you
But
what do you consider an animal has to be in captivity? Like how long before it's considered long term captive?
like 5 years, I mean that's long term captive.
That's what I agree with that 100. I say 5 to 10 years, and I
Yeah,
see so many people selling animals as long term captive, and it's been in captivity for 6 months to a year.
yeah,
Like
six
how was
months
that
to a year.
long
Yeah, right.
term?
That's long term.
Like a perfect example, my male blue tail monitor that passed away due to parasites. I had him for 8 months. I
Yeah,
treated him the first month I got him. Obviously, I didn't treat him enough, but it was just preventative treatment. He never showed any signs, so I wasn't really that stressed about it. So I didn't want to, I did it one dosage, and I was like, all right, he seems fine. 8 months go by, completely fine, warming up to me. I'm hand feeding him, doing all this stuff, and one day I wake up and he's just dead in the bottom of his cage, getting an
which
autopsy
is
done, and it was
was
parasites.
which was recently because I know I saw your memories on Snapchat.
That was the female that died on the
Oh, that was the
memories,
female.
but yeah, that was rough.
Yeah.
She ended up passing. She passed through a whole bunch of stuff, basically due to import issues.
Yeah.
She was imported in. She was full grown adult. She was a good 5.5, 6. No, she was about 4.5, 5 foot. Sorry. She was gravid. I didn't know that at the time, but when she was imported in, she got to someone whoever imported her in. She was then sold to somebody. That person then sold it to somebody else, and then that person then sold it to me. So it went through 3 houses. I didn't know it went through that many homes. I just yeah, I wasn't told that before I bought the animal, and
Yeah.
so I had her for 14 days. I didn't even have her for a month. 14 days on the dot. It passed away, and then when I got the autopsy done, she had 6 eggs building inside of her. She had hundreds of cancerous tumor growths all over her, and was riddled with parasites. So a combination of all that stuff, all that stress, just was pretty
Oh,
much what did it.
miserable.
She was
And,
she was done for.
yeah, and that's why you really have to know. If you're buying wild caught stuff, I would say you really have to know the person you're buying it from.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I've met a few people that import, and I buy stuff from them. I mean, I've seen their animals. I mean, they have good stock of
Yep.
things. Um, but there's some that's like no, like I mean, you go to. I remember going to this show in when I lived in Virginia Beach. I went to the show they had there in Chesapeake, and one of the stores like sponsored it,
Mm-hmm.
and you'd go in there and they'd have a 10-gallon aquarium with probably 10 or 12 Asian water monitors, and they're just skin and bones.
Oh wow, that's fucked.
I'm like, what? And they're like, $200 a piece. I said, I'll give you $200 for all of them, and I might have 3 at the end of the day. But like, I just
Yeah,
that kind
it's
of
fun.
shit.
And how do you? So like, this is an interesting topic. I like. How do you feel about importers? Like, do you buy do you want your importer to treat the animal when they get it in? Because like,
No, no.
I'm the same way. I don't want. I want to do the treatment myself.
Well, and this is a shout out to Kai. Kai, I don't know if you listen to the podcast, but I'm shouting this out to you, and I'm shouting out Alan. Um, they did a great episode, and I forget who the guest was on it, but they were talking about the use of Panicure and
Yes.
stuff, and how Panicure is great, but it can also kill an animal.
Oh, it'll kill animals so fast. I'd
And it's
rather
like,
not use Panicure than
yeah,
use
no,
Panicure and not need it.
definitely. I mean, I wish there was. I almost wish there was a way that you could do like a diatomaceous earth treatment or something.
Yeah, I mean, you can do like at-home fecal samples and like fecal tests, and then with that you can find out if you really need to use Panicure or not. And when I get my next import, I'm definitely going to be doing that. But yeah, just
and
it's too risky.
yeah, I mean, even like in Florida, I can't tell you how many people I know that have caught rat snakes and stuff like that, and they keep them.
Mm-hmm.
And they keep them with the rest of their animals, and they're like, oh, well, I just caught him outside, and he's great, he's friendly, and all that stuff. It's
Yeah,
like, but what is that animal going to give the rest of your stuff?
yeah. People don't think sometimes. Like I know, I want to jump back into the Panicure like real quick because I don't think a lot of people, everyone like I think a lot of people know what Panicure is, and like a lot of people use Panicure, but I don't think they're using it correctly. Like
Yeah,
if
definitely not.
you can overdose your animal with Panicure very, very, very easily. Like you have to be
Yeah.
very careful with that. And if you do it
It,
too many treatments in a short period of time, your animal will die. So
well,
like
not only that, it also causes cancer in some animals
yeah,
too.
oh yeah,
And it's like it's not worth it.
it's not worth it at all. So like usually like if I hear an importer or someone like is treating with Panicure or like I always ask if I'm buying from an importer, I always ask, are you treating this animal? And if they say yes, like I usually pass. But if they're saying no, I'm all for it. I don't like when
And,
I hear they're being treated.
and I wish that we had some of the reptile, like the people that are really into reptiles as far as like Exoterra, Zoomed, uh, things like that would actually come out. Because I mean, you could buy uh, anti or parasitic medicine for fish. You can buy anti-worm or dewormer for
Mm-hmm.
dogs and cats. And I mean, why? I don't understand why.
Yeah, like Panicure is not. It's for what dogs and cats, right, and horses.
I think the horses.
Yeah.
And I mean, let's be real. It's not really. Reptiles are so different than mammals. I mean, does it work? I mean, it's like talking about the COVID thing and people using that. What was it called?
Vaccine.
I don't even remember what it was. That thing that everybody got mad at Joe Rogan for taking because he took that.
Oh, the
Uh,
I'm grabbing a water. You can keep talking, but I know what you're talking about. The oh shit.
Ivermectin.
Yeah.
That's what it's called. And it's like, look, ivermectin was used in humans or was used for humans for a long time. Whatever. But I don't even know if you can still get ivermectin for humans now. But
Hopefully soon someone will start working with something and help get some preventative treatment that's not
yeah,
that necessary for an animal
right.
or for
I mean,
reptiles.
yeah, I mean, definitely if we can have something for reptiles, it would be great. But I mean, I can't think of a good, safe way to truly get rid of parasites. I mean, unless you're really good at your dosing and whatnot, with Panicure, Panicure is the only thing we really have to use. I mean, because
Yeah.
what's a vet gonna use? Panicure. I mean, let's
Yeah,
be
there's
real.
like and like there's other stuff to use if it's not parasites, like if it's a fungal or some other type of
Yeah,
infection. But parasite wise, the only thing I know of is Panicure. But I'm also not a vet, and I don't pay attention to that kind of stuff.
yeah, and as we all know that the exotic animal vets are insanely expensive. They just they just are.
Yeah,
I mean, and it's like it's unfortunate that all we have is Panicure. I mean, we have all these other supplements and whatnot for our animals. Like we have electrolyte soaks, we have all this stuff, and it's like, why don't we do something that is actually going to help a lot of people? Because there are still so many wild caught animals out there.
yeah. How many more UVB lights do we need? Like,
Now, now,
come on, Arcadia. What the heck?
no, and I was actually looking at it today, and the that what is it the Terra Sky UV, the
Yeah.
new LED UV.
Yeah,
I was like,
those
heck
have
yeah,
been out
I
for a
want to
while.
get those. I want to get one.
Yeah, the
But
UVB LEDs have been out for a while. I don't. Everyone's freaking out. Like, not the Sexoterra one looks nice, but like there's been nice ones around for a while. It's almost like people have never heard of this concept before. It's kind of crazy.
I think it's the fact that they're finally getting it to where it has the proper amounts of UV.
Hey, VivTech has been around for few years now, and they're better than this Exoterra one. VivTech's the best
No,
you can get. Yeah, you should look into it. You might have to. I don't know. They're probably a lot bigger now, but I know a couple of years ago when Mitchell has some for his electric blues,
yeah,
and he was on like a wait list for like it was only like a month or something like that, but
right.
they were all sold out. But they're super excuse me, nice. And he makes like different style LEDs, like brightnesses with different UVB ratings and all kinds of stuff.
Well,
He used to work for Zoomed actually,
oh,
or
that's
Zillow,
awesome.
or Zillow, one of those two.
Zillow, that's the other company I was thinking of. It's like, do some R&D, guys. Give us a anti-parasitic medicine for our reptiles. I'm tired of you guys changing lights and all this stuff.
They'll
Let's get
definitely
something
make
that
money off doing it. Like if they can make something good, it'll go
Oh,
crazy.
hell, I mean, would you not spend $50 on an anti-parasitic that you know is not going to kill your animal? I
Oh,
do all day long.
100%. I have multiple of them laying around my house.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know, that parasites are my biggest problem when it comes to wild caught, farm bred or farm raised animals. Um, it's just a pain in the butt because you think you have them all, and then they come back, and it's like,
Yep.
well, where did they come from? And even sometimes feeding different things too. It's like, well, like we raise quail, and how do I know? I mean, I don't even know that some of my quail don't have parasites.
Yeah,
You know,
I get worried about that
so
when feeding fish. Specifically, oh my gosh, I can't talk. But my male mangrove Dennis, he went through hell. Like I have legitimately like a folder this thick of vet paperwork from before I got him, and he had a shit ton of internal parasites and issues,
yeah,
and all those parasites that he had internally were from fish. Like he got them from eating the fish in the wild. Um, so I've always been worried about feeding fish to him. So I always try and stick with saltwater fish because saltwater and freshwater usually doesn't transfer over. From what I hear, I don't know how true that is. That's just what I've been told, and it makes me feel better about myself.
silver sides are great. Let me tell you. But I mean, and that's the other thing is you really have to know when it comes to your feeders with all this stuff because you can go like say you go to your local pet store, right, and they have the big feeder bins of mice and rats and all that stuff. If you've ever been to a rat breeding facility,
Oh,
it is the most disgusting thing ever. There's nothing clean about a rodent breeding facility.
yep.
So to go there and get some where you're getting in. Like I remember the smell of my old rat guy that I had, and it was just, dude, you stink. Like
Yeah.
you smell, your vehicle smells. I mean, yes, I understand you're dealing with rats, but I mean, he'd bring us probably 150 mice twice a week,
Yeah, we were
and
when I
it's
was at
like,
the reptile store, dude. We had 2 locations, and we would get 400 or 500 different mice and rats twice a week,
yeah,
and it
I mean, it's
was awful.
oh yeah, and if you think that the feeder mice and rats are getting fed well or
Hell
anything
no.
like that, I mean, we used to take and I admit this only because I know it's wrong, but at the same time, we would feed them open back like if a bag of kibble broke open, we would take that and feed them dog food or cat food or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so these animals that if you don't know where your food's coming from, it really is kind of.
That's
I mean, it definitely sketches you out,
yeah. That's why I
and I
always
say
go to
that.
support your like. There's a few breeders that are like people selling on a big scale, rodent
Yeah,
wise, and not rodent wise, but feeder wise. And you definitely just gotta support them because they're actually working with U.S. grown in their own facility grown rodents. Like a lot of these people, especially frozen wise, are just
hmm
getting shit shipped over from overseas, and it is coming in nasty, all moldy, all deteriorated, filled with all kinds of shit that'll kill your animals.
and I mean that's Cold Blooded Cafe. I can't
Yep.
say enough great things about them. Um,
I'll shout out
I know they,
Superior Feeders as
yeah,
well.
Superior's great. Um, but I mean they take time in their feeders and they do good jobs. So, but just know that just because your animal's not wild caught, or your animal, or if your animal is captive bred, it can still end up with parasites.
Oh
There's
yeah,
nothing that says
definitely.
that it can't. I mean, you got to think these animals are carnivore; they eat a raw diet, so
I'm getting my
it
monkey
very
tail.
well.
I'm taking my group of monkey tails to the vet here in about a week or two to get them checked out, just to make sure they're all good and they're nothing's going on with them. I just want to start taking all my animals for daily checkups just to make sure they're all good and staying
Yeah,
healthy. I think
yeah,
everyone
they're
really
not,
should.
yeah. Um, but yeah, as far as yeah, but I mean, again, parasites they'll happen with anything that eats a live feeders.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as with live feeders too, is don't feed don't feed anything live feeder fish.
Yeah.
Like there's
Well, it depends on what your feeder fish are, because like I consider
yeah,
feeder like personally, like I consider feeder fish the safe ones. Like I don't consider goldfish and Rosie's feeder fish. Like I consider mollies, platies, guppies,
yeah,
cichlids. Like I consider those feeder fish, but like from a
yeah,
chain box store, feeder fish definitely are no go.
yeah. I mean the again how they raise them, and when you've gone to a fish farm and see what they do and what they're in, and it's like it's not good ideas. Um, so just avoid that at all costs. I
Mm-hmm.
mean that's why silver sides are great,
Yeah.
especially if you go to like an Asian market and you get silver sides. Guess what? They're human grade. It's human grade food. It's still cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, frozen sardines are a great thing. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Thaw it out and do it to it.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, you got to worry about mercury when it comes to the sardines, but
How do you
just don't feed
feel
birds all
about?
the time.
Obviously, I think everyone knows gut loading insects. How do you feel about gut loading rodents?
Well,
And what do you do? Do you just use like Missouri pellets or some sort of pellet? Or I know there's been big debate in the emerald tree boa and green tree python community recently about rodents being fed grain foods versus non-grain foods. And like, do you think? I know you probably have not heard that debate or discussion. So like, but like just me mentioning that, what do you think about that?
well, I guess for one, the first thing I'll say is I have no idea what a natural diet is for mice and rats.
Yeah, I
Um,
would assume like berries and just like random scavenging shit. I don't know.
Stuff. I mean, they eat stuff. I
I
mean,
think of a rat. I think
oh,
New York City and like and shit
no,
like that.
I
So
mean, I think of the mice that like to go hang out in my chicken coop outside. Um, but I mean, I guess my thing is if you're worried about gut loading your rodents, you are not you are not ethically feeding your animal.
what do you mean by that?
Well, I guess the big thing is if you're gut loading your animals, that means you're buying. If you're gut loading rodents, that means you're buying live rodents, right?
Yeah.
And taking those live rodents, that means you're either feeding live or you're potentially inhumanely killing the rodents.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the old grab them by the tail and slap them on the ground.
I think gotta pull them apart.
Or, yeah, or just pop them. So, unless you have a dry ice cooler that you use to kill them or a CO2
Yeah, I was
machine
gonna
or
say
something like
I
that.
know some people will just get like a little CO2 can, put a
Yeah.
little just make a little chamber themselves.
Yeah, I mean, the dry ice in a styrofoam cooler works real quick.
Do you think?
Oh,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it just popped in my head. Do you think like gut loading a rodent and then we'll just say the most humane way possible, CO2 chambering it, freezing it, and then feeding it frozen? Do you think that's gonna be beneficial?
I mean, to an extent, I guess. I mean,
Or not to an extent where it really matters?
right. I mean, I don't think I don't think that it's. I guess it depends on. I mean, you're not going to go and because the life cycle on a rodent is vastly longer than that of a an insect per se.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're gut loading it for a week and then doing that, I don't think you're going to get much benefit out of it. Now, again, if you're raising your own rodents and you're taking care of your rodents and you're doing all those things, I think that changes things.
Yeah.
But if you're buying them from, again, a local pet store where I mean, somebody's mass producing these rodents, which it's not hard to mass produce rodents, but I don't think I don't think it's going to change much.
Yeah.
If
So
that
yeah.
makes any sense.
No, I agree. I think it doesn't really. I think the only time it changes stuff is if you're doing it long term. I don't think
Right.
gut loading an animal for 2 weeks is going to affect shit.
Yeah. I mean, I also think that when it boils down to it, as far as especially snakes, because snakes are the number one thing uh, that could benefit or that really actually benefit from eating rodents over um, birds. Um, just because the bone density in a rodent versus the bone density in a bird and all those things. Um, I really, because I mean, I've never dusted any rodent or anything like that when I fed it to a snake
Yeah.
Or did any kind of vitamins or anything like that. Like, I just I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. It's we've mentioned before, like most people don't dust their whole prey items. I used to not, and I honestly I rarely do now. But I remember I asked it about a year ago. I was just curious, asking if anyone does, and if they do, like what the routine is. And Kai Fan commented that he does every single feeding pretty much. He dusts his like quail and his rodents for his mangroves.
yeah, and I mean,
But then my concern would be like, would you not be concerned about doing too much at that point? Because naturally, those
well,
bones have calcium.
right. And I don't know Kai well enough to know, and I don't know what his husbandry's like. I mean, I know he's got some really nice cages for his mangroves, and he takes great care of them. But and I also know that he feeds his mangroves still hoppers too.
Mhm.
So, and by hoppers I mean grasshoppers, not hopper mice. Um, but I don't know if people are doing that for the in supplementing for D3 as opposed to using UV because supplementing with D3 calcium
That would
is.
make sense. That would make sense.
I mean, that's the only thing I could think is for the D3.
I'd have to go through our chat and look at his pictures of his setups, but I can't recall if he has UVB or not.
Yeah,
Um,
and
that makes a lot of sense actually.
yeah, so um, yeah, I mean, he could do it for a number of reasons. People could do it for a number of reasons. Maybe they do need the extra calcium. I mean, I would say if if you are breeding and you have a female that just laid a large clutch,
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely dust their whole prey items.
Yeah.
Give them that extra calcium. Or if they're about to lay, dust them up, uh, dust their whole food items because they're going to use an excess amount of calcium to produce those eggs. So why wouldn't you give them
Yeah.
more calcium so that way um, they could do things? I don't. But I also look at it this way too: is in the wild, nothing's dusting them for calcium. So why do they have to have
Yeah.
a calcium dust on whole prey items?
It's interesting. Who knows? Maybe the
And
natural sun really affects that.
and I guess that's kind of one of the pros that I would say towards wild caught is, for one, these animals live a fairly healthy life in the wild,
Yeah.
right? And they're
Sometimes, like
not.
they definitely can. They definitely can be malnourished in the wild, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, because
very
they
rare.
actually have to hunt for their food. Nothing's giving them food
Mm-hmm.
or anything of that nature. So, um, maybe they, but and they're also much more active than they would be in a smaller enclosure. Um, so I guess that would be another drawback to a wild caught animal versus a captive bred animal. Is a wild caught animal is used to roaming around and not being confined to a space.
Yeah, they're a lot more
Uh,
spazzy and timid.
and some are and some aren't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can get a wild caught animal that is chill. Like you can get
Look at
a
Nick's
fully grown
croc
dog.
monitor.
Yeah, I mean, and I think well, and Chris had a big male croc monitor that was chill.
It's possible.
And,
Tom
and
Freshfield has one. A couple.
yeah, I mean, it's definitely it definitely happens, but is it the norm? Uh,
Who
no.
knows?
I mean, most animals are fairly hesitant around humans.
Yeah.
So, and especially with something as intelligent as monitors, um, you have to gain that trust with them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it's also no different with birds or anything like that. Is these more highly intelligent animals, you have to gain their trust, and you have to continually work with them all the time. Like I notice with the sulfurs we have outside, which are all captive born and bred. If I don't go out there every day, like if I miss a day, they're like, "Who are you?
Yeah.
Why are you here?"
That's how my
And
mangroves were.
and it's one of those things where it's it's tough when you go on vacation, or if I go on vacation or Chris goes on vacation. It's like you have to reacclimate yourself to these animals, or else they have no idea who you are. I mean,
Yeah.
chickens are dumb, quail are dumb, ducks are dumb.
Monitors are
All they
not.
know is monitors. Yeah, monitors are not. Monitors are highly intelligent animals. Birds, most parrots are highly intelligent animals. They know who brings them food, when their food's coming, all that stuff, and they act differently. And they're like, "Hey, it's time for food." And that's how you can kind of also tell with monitors how they're going to react to things. And that's kind of why I like. That's one of the reasons why I like reptiles almost more than mammals because you almost can tell what they're thinking by their body language, as opposed to a mammal can just, I'm cool, I'm cool, I'm not cool.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's not fun. Um, so,
What would another pro for wild caught be for you? We'll do, since we both did 2 cons. Let's both do 2 pros.
well, if the like we said, experienced keepers are the ones that need to keep wild caught. I think that if you are doing a breeding, um, if you are doing it for breeding purposes, you don't know the genetics of that animal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for one, it can further your, and this is a two-part pro. One, it can further your genetics that you're breeding with. So like say you're um, like Ackie monitors, for example, right? We stopped importing Ackie monitors so many years ago, so there's only so much of a gene pool that you can have. So it would actually be nice if they opened up Ackies again for, we'll say, 6 months.
Dude, it'd be nice if they opened up any part of Australia. Bearded dragons are being inbred like crazy at this point.
Yeah.
It's wild.
So in that part, you expand your gene pool. And the second part of that too is, say, like we have all these hets, right? Like,
not the fake
we have, yeah, the fake het. Well, wild caught animal, you don't know what their genetics are, so you don't know what's going to happen with them. And I don't know, like, we just had our fourth lace hatch out there, or when I say we, I say Chris.
Dude.
And
he is
what was really cool is it was a male Bell's with a female normal. And of the 4 eggs that we had that were viable, 3 of them were Bells, and one of them ended up being a blue lace. Which
blue lace. And he is a tiger too. Chris has posted pictures of him, so I'm gonna put pictures up right now because he's already posted it, so we can show.
I sent you those pictures. Those are iPhone 15 Pro Max pictures.
I'll send you, and you're holding it, so.
No, I wasn't holding it. Chris was holding it. I was taking the pictures. But
well, like a perfect example of that, of not random genetics playing in the factor is this is a fun little story. My manager, one of my fellow managers that I work with, she is from Puerto Rico, and she has a friend down in Puerto Rico that keeps reptiles and goes out and catches the caiman, the spectacled caiman out in Puerto Rico. They're super invasive. They're not supposed to be there, and I don't think you're supposed to keep them either. But he catches them, and will get females that lay eggs every so often. And he got this female, and she laid eggs, and out of that clutch of eggs popped 4 leucistic spectacled caiman.
Yeah.
Just randomly. And I'll throw up pictures. They are crazy stunning. One of them looks like it could be an albino, so it could be 3 Lucies and 1 albino, because it does look like it has red eyes. But it's crazy how, I mean, like, and you with the albino bearded dragon. Like, random genetics are a crazy factor.
Yeah, you just really never know what you're gonna get when it comes to a wild caught animal.
Yeah.
I mean, because even like locales, like the 2 Celebensis that are here now that are Wes's, I mean, they look so vastly different, and they. I mean, you never know what's going to pop out. It's like we had talked about, we have that Xanthic.
Yeah.
There was a wild caught Xanthic. Well, how do we know that he's not het for Black Dragon or het for T Plus or het for T Ned?
Who knows? It could be. That would be crazy cool.
I mean, imagine getting an Xanthic Celebensis. I mean, that would be cool as all
Fuck.
hell.
Yeah.
Uh, or I mean, even some of the, like sulfurs. Well, imagine the exotic sulfur coming out. You know,
That
you
would be
just,
cool looking.
I mean, you just never know what these animals, what the wild caught animals have bred with in the past. So you never really know what you're gonna end up getting. It's like you look at ball python genetics, and it drives me nuts because you can breed two different things together, and you can have 15 different morphs.
Yeah, and
Right?
then each one of those morphs has like 15 different names it can be called depending on who you
Yeah.
are. That's a shit
and
show.
and it's just and it's that's the that's the cool thing when you're talking about being a breeder and you get some of these, because there are these coral albino there are coral albino water monitors in the wild that are they're just they're naturally occurring morphs.
Yeah, I mean, all
But
morphs started from somewhere in the wild. I
yeah,
mean,
but
there's been some
but
crazy.
what I find is really crazy is like you're being down in Florida and the Everglades, they have the Burmese python problem, and everybody wants to talk about how it's, oh well, people let go of their pets. Well, if that
Where
were
are
the
the
case,
morphs?
how come you're not finding morphs of?
Yeah, I've said that so many times. It was like I don't know how many times people have to emphasize. It was a skin trade factory that got destroyed and released all those berms.
Oh, I
That's
mean,
why when
look,
you
look,
look at berms from Florida, they're considered some of the nicest looking normal berms. It's because they were
yeah,
bred to have that nice quality skin. Everglades berms are some of the fucking most drop dead gorgeous normal berms you can ever find.
yeah, and I mean, there was a lot. Let's be real. It all happened because of Hurricane Andrew
Yep.
destroying Miami.
Yeah.
So there, I'm not gonna lie, there were pet trade stuff that did get out,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't because people were leasing their pets. It was because
And most of that shit,
facilities.
most of the pet trade stuff got back. Like I know,
Yeah,
obviously, like there's a few stuff that didn't, but most of the stuff got back into the hands of the proper owners.
yeah, and so that's one of the things I don't think that FWC wants to recognize is the fact that hey, it's not the pet trade, because if it was the pet trade,
More,
wouldn't we have more green berms? Wouldn't we have more albino berms? Wouldn't we have more
yep. The only morph,
statistic berms?
yeah. There's only been one morph found, and it was a labyrinth, and that's a natural occurring morph over in where they're from. So
Yeah. So that just goes to tell you that whatever it was not. I mean, they were definitely breeding these to just be normal Burmese pythons,
oh yeah,
and they had the gene pool dwindled down to just perfect specimens of Burmese pythons. So, and it's the same thing with like black and white tegus that are down there.
mm-hmm.
There's just black and white tegus. There's no blues. There's no reds.
Yeah.
There's no albinos. They're just black and white tegus. You have Nile monitors down there, and over on Palm Island,
Mm-hmm.
they're they're just Niles. They're not ornates. They're just Niles. So it drives me nuts when it comes to that stuff. And the other thing they don't take into account too is some of these wild caught or these invasive species also come in on plant trade.
That's how the Knolls got here, and that's
Yeah.
how I'll say the iguanas got here. There was reportings like if you look back, like you have to go searching, but there's reportings and sightings of iguanas being in South Florida in like the 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
Like there's even an argument to say that they're even native to South Florida, and I would agree
Yeah.
with that. I mean, tell me South Florida isn't the perfect environment for iguanas. Like
Well, it's
is.
been proven that it's the perfect. I
Like
mean, but with the iguana thing too is but you do see, because it's a naturally occurring morph, is the red iguanas. There are red iguanas down But I mean, it's a naturally occurring morph of the green iguana.
Yeah.
But you're not seeing blues. You're not seeing albinos. I guess you'd see an albino at some point in time if you're lucky. But most of it is reds and greens.
Yep.
But also, if you take a red iguana and you don't have UV light on it and you don't have the proper lighting, it'll turn back into a green.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to me. So that's probably the best pros when it comes to wild caught is for the breeding side of things. You're able to expand your genetics,
Mm-hmm.
and you're able to not know what you're going to get when you start breed these things.
Yeah.
Not to mention having wild caught animals and then turning around and breeding those wild caught animals. You actually are, if for whatever reason the population of the wild goes down too much, you now are able to produce animals that are able to go back out in the wild and be in the wild.
Yeah.
For example, radiated tortoises. Didn't they just release like 20,000 radiated tortoises back into Madagascar or something like that?
I
Because
probably should know that answer, but I don't.
yeah, I just saw something pop up where there was a big breeding facility where I thought it was like 20,000 radiated tortoises just got or are getting set to be re-released into Madagascar.
I know when I was at the alligator farm, um, we released Siamese crocodiles back into the wild, like a bunch of them.
Yeah. So, and you're not gonna get to that point of being able to do that side of the conservation without wild caught animals because
Yeah.
those animals have to get here somewhere. So you have to catch them and produce them. And that's one of the things I wish that, like, you look at some of these zoos where it's like they're AZA accredited zoos and they're producing all these animals. Well, no other AZA zoo wants them, so we're producing so many of them. So
Freeze them.
we're just gonna, yeah, kill them. Or I was watching an episode of my son decided he wanted to get into Crikey at the Irwins, and they had an entire clutch of I don't remember what kind of croc it was, but an entire clutch of croc eggs, and they just got rid of them. I'm like,
I've
why
witnessed
would
it.
we?
I've witnessed it personally. It's wild, and I have a friend. Well, I guess he doesn't work there anymore, but he used to work in Atlanta Zoo. And another one of my friends went to go visit him one time, and literally, it was this one of the more endangered species of Ufaga dart frogs. Uh, like hundreds of tadpoles, just fucking put in the freezer. It's wild.
And it's and the worry I have with that too is look at how many komodos are getting produced now.
Oh, there's
And
already
these,
Komodo clutches and shit being fucking tossed.
I mean, are they? I mean, they're
Yeah,
getting.
no, I know zoos that are tossing Komodo clutches. Dude, the
That's
Komodos are bred so frequently around the world. They're not really needed. Isn't that wild to hear? It's fucked. Like I mean that's honestly one of the biggest reasons why I don't want to go AZA anymore. Like and I love AZA. I'll always stand by AZA. They do a lot more good than they do bad. They
yeah,
do a lot more good than they do bad. But I want to be able to work with whatever the fuck I want to work with and keep whatever the fuck I want to keep.
basically, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's to to do something like that is wrong because I mean, think of the responsible keepers that are out there. How many responsible keepers would love to be able to have the opportunity to have a komodo?
Yeah. Look at Ty Parks.
Yeah, I mean, what happens when they start doing that with parentes and things like that, or like why we have a ban on Fiji iguanas. It's like
Yo,
think
you
of all the
don't,
things.
you know, dude. Do you know San Diego Zoo is like has it? Do you know how many Fijis they have? You know they have the largest Fiji collection in the entire world. They have
Yes,
over 100 Fiji iguanas. Now, those are so critically endangered and so rare that like they still have plenty of zoos to go to. Not that who knows? Like
right.
maybe in like 10, 20 years they'll start fucking killing off Fijis.
Well, and it's again with like the radiators. Well, radiators can't cross state lines without the proper permitting and this, that, and the other.
Bless you, bless you,
Oh, yeah. Oh gosh, there's another one. Oh, yep.
bless you.
Thank you.
Yeah, with the CITES.
But so your radiated tortoises, you have to have all these permits, or you have to gift it, or you have to do that, or you have to do this if it wants to cross state lines. And it's like, why as a are we so worried about this when it comes to there's so many people that are able to breed these things and figure it out and do it. So these
There's
captive bred animals could go turn back around and we could start saving populations of all these critically endangered
I
all
can
this critically endangered
yeah.
wildlife all over the world. I mean,
Indeed,
there's
one of the
some
best
things. There's
examples I like to use for that is Indian spotted turtles. Let me look up real quick. I just want to see their wild numbers because they are super endangered. Let's see. There's about 30 to 1,200 individual Indian spotted turtles in their native range. Keep in mind,
wow.
30 to 1,200. That's a low number. All right. And they're an ESA animal here in the United States, so they can't cross state lines, just like the radiateds. Wayne Hill from National Breeders Expo and Wayne Hill, who breeds turtles, he produces 5 to 6,000 Indian spotteds a year. And he has tried getting in contact like multiple times. He's tried sending them back to India to help replenish numbers, even if it's a small amount. Like he has a bunch of different, like unrelated animals. Like he can do it, but they won't accept them. They won't take them back, and he can gift them across state lines, but there is legitimately like 5 times the amount of Indian spotted turtles here in Florida than there is anywhere else in the world, and they can't leave. They're stuck here.
Yeah, and and that's when it comes to why do we not want to save some of these animals?
I have no idea. Like I can understand it with some animals that are super endangered, not being produced a lot. You don't want to risk like smuggling and all that, but come on, there's being 6,000 produced a year by one fucking person. There's plenty of
Yeah,
other Indian spotted turtle breeders in this state. Like there is
yeah,
thousands upon thousands of them here in the states, in Florida, I should say. And it's like, why can't they go to Georgia? Why can't someone sell it to someone in Alabama?
yeah.
Another
I
thing
mean,
is like Galapagos tortoises. They're ESA, but an infertile Galapagos egg cannot cross state lines either. Certain crocodilian teeth and skulls cannot cross state lines.
yeah,
It's so confusing. I mean, there's like with the skulls and stuff, like the bones. There's probably a good reasoning, you know, to prevent illegal like poaching and all that. But an infertile egg, what the fuck is that gonna do?
yeah, yeah. I mean, and this is where we want to talk about the biggest benefit there can be to captive breeding by far is keeping these species alive and going.
100%.
I mean, by far, keeping the species going,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what species it is. That's why any ball python guy, you know, I go back and forth between, do I like ball pythons? Do I not like ball pythons? Secretly, I love ball pythons, but I can't love ball pythons because
We're not allowed to talk
it
about them
drives.
on this show, by the way.
Yeah, we're not really allowed to talk about
You've
it,
said
but
the word too much.
yeah. But at what point, ball python guys, and I'm asking this to you, when are we going to go back to the days of just loving the animals for their natural beauty?
Yeah. When
Because
when
when
we,
it boils down to it, you're not you. There's going to be a point in time where, like, you look at some of these people that keep venomous and stuff like that, like king cobras, and they breed ball pythons because ball pythons are easy, and they'll take like the clowns, the whatever the high end. I mean, I don't even know what the high end ball pythons are, but I think last time I saw clowns, everybody wants clown ball
yeah,
python.
clowns are still
But
up there. They're not. They're
but
any
if
clown combo is gonna be good.
but if a normal ball python pops out, what's the first thing we do with it? We feed it off, or we kill it, or we don't want it, and it's like, for one, I know that there's people out there that would love to have a snake and can't afford it. So why don't we just give them away to somebody who wants to have a snake, and then that snake has to live. Well, I shouldn't say you can't afford it, but somebody that wants a snake but doesn't have an opportunity to have one or what have you, just give the snake away. You don't have to feed it to a. I mean, feed these snakes because they're it's just a normal. It doesn't matter. Well,
Shit,
at the
I
rate
know
that
people. I know Cobra Keep people that don't give a fuck. I know people that feed black dragons to their fucking cobras.
yeah, I've seen that YouTube video before.
Yeah, I know there's, but I definitely see your point. Like, and with that, like, why are ball pythons still being imported in? Like, they're still being mass imported in.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. There's going to be a point in time where the ball python population is the normal ball python population is going to be pretty much gone.
And I think that's going to happen as soon as they stop exporting ball pythons. As soon as they stop exporting ball pythons, you're going to notice there's going to be no normals around.
Yeah. Oh,
Unless it's
absolutely.
a het.
Yeah. All the hets. The
Yeah,
hets.
all the hets will be around.
So, and 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 even with everything snake wise, like, yeah, there's definitely some pretty snakes out there. Like, there's pretty retics out there, retic
Trees,
morphs. There's pretty Burmese morphs.
green
There's
trees.
there's gorgeous morphs on the for carpet pythons. But at what point do we lose track of the animal itself? Like, what it originated at, what it originally was.
That's
Yes,
what.
I understand. Yes, I understand. There's anomalies in genetics,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where we get some of this cool stuff. But like pastels, normals, and like the spot nose, blackheads, those are all fairly common, normal,
Yeah.
like naturally occurring things that happen. And where we lose sight of that, it's like um, king orms, French king orms. Um, everybody wants the leucistic ones, and nobody wants normal ones.
Yeah.
To the point now where everybody's breeding for the leucistic ones, and normal ones are becoming harder and harder to find. So now the normal ones cost more than the leucistic ones,
Yeah.
or even, or we can go along with that same leucistic thing, Texas rats. Remember how they had the leucistic Texas rats, and it's like, oh, now leucistic Texas rats don't cost anything, and a normal Texas rat is extremely expensive.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I like
So
my green tree pythons, my Amazon and emerald tree boas. Like, I mean,
yeah,
Now the green trees, you get into designers, and it basically is morphs at that point, but it's
Right.
more locality crosses than anything. And I do love morphs, but I love localities and locale specific stuff way
Mhm.
more. I would rather work with pure localities than morphs or hybrids any day of the week.
Right. And I mean, with that, I guess you could say one of the biggest downfalls of captive breeding, and I know that some countries have actually banned certain animals. And again, I'm sorry, ball python guys, but look at the spiders. Why they look good, but why would you want to continually breed something that is notorious for having a neurological issue?
Yeah, I remember we
Or
had this conversation before. It makes zero sense.
yeah, or the jaguars in the carpet pythons.
How do you feel about
What?
hybrids
Well,
like
like
retic berms, berm balls, short tailed balls?
I mean, I guess about the same way as I feel about a Chihuahua mixed with a German Shepherd.
Stupid.
Yep. I
Yeah.
mean, it's nice, like the the boa condas, I think is what they call them.
Yeah.
Those are kind of cool because you can get your loopholes about having hybrids or like your common snapping turtles mixed with your alligator snappers. It
I think like for me, I like them, but I don't like them. It really just depends on the hybrid. If it's a hybrid that is
right,
naturally occurring or not too crazy, I can respect it. Like a gaboon rhino viper hybrid
yeah,
that happens in the wild. Canebrake eastern diamondbacks that happens in the wild. Why I'm
yeah,
listing venomous hybrids, I don't know. It's the only two I can think of that naturally occur.
yeah.
But
Uh, I mean, I mean, in dolphins, some spotted
yeah,
dolphins
I
and
mean,
bottlenose dolphins.
I've seen a gopher California king snake hybrid posted that was in the wild.
That's pretty cool. But yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, there's many animals that can crossbreed. Um, I mean, or naturally occurring hybrids. Macaws that happens quite often.
really. Like I know there
Yeah,
are hybrids. I just didn't know they were naturally occurring.
yeah. I mean, you got to think they kind of all live. They come from the same area. So, I mean, a green wing and a blue and gold get together, they make a harlequin. Uh, but now, as far as reptiles go, I don't know about like the like the gaboon and rhino if that's a if that animal is sterile or not. I don't know. I
From
know
my
that the
understanding,
macaws.
they are.
Yeah, well, macaws they're not.
Yeah, I know, but I know some species of like some berm balls aren't sterile. The boa condas aren't sterile.
I knew that.
I'm pretty sure
Uh,
the common alligator snapping turtles are not sterile.
yeah, the alligator and commons are not sterile. I want. Is it the blood ball? I think the
Yeah,
blood ball is not
no,
sterile.
and neither is the Woma ball,
Yeah.
the wall. Another weird hybrid that occurs that's naturally occurring, but I don't support because it's not really, excuse me, naturally occurring. Is do you know why? Do you know why Cuban crocodiles are going extinct?
Maybe because there's Siamese crocodiles in Cuba.
Um, it's because of American crocodiles, actually.
Oh yeah, America.
So
That would make sense. So,
when they dug everything out, dug that the Panama Canal, it opened up the waterways for Americans to and Cubans to interlink with each other, and so they've just been creating a ton of basically it's dwindled the Cuban crocodile population down to solely one little tiny swamp, and it's the only place in the world where you can find pure Cuban crocodiles. And even then, I've heard, as of a couple years ago, I've heard that there's been a possibility of some American Cuban hybrids getting closer to that area, or Americans getting closer to that area. To
I wonder if that's just the male American crocs because they're bigger than the Cuban crocs, taking out the male Cuban crocs.
I never thought about that. I doubt it, considering how Cuban crocodiles work. Cuban crocodiles are, I don't know. I mean, an American crocodile is definitely a lot bigger, but I don't know. I've heard that Cubans will actually hunt in packs in the wild. Um, from my understanding, from what I've heard, is like they'll have, because they can gallop on all fours,
Yeah,
and they will chase down, like, let's say a deer. They're chasing after a deer, just a single one, and they basically, like wolves do, they lead it into an ambush. They'll lead the deer into like an area where like the other two or three Cubans are hiding, and then they jump out and ambush them. It's insane to think about.
but
That's what they do.
but a Cuban only gets what 10 foot.
Yeah, that'd be a massive one.
Yeah, I mean, so they're not big, whereas a American croc can get 15.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely, I definitely see your point. I definitely do think the Americans are also bullying the male Cubans,
Oh
but
yeah, I mean, even if they're not eating them, they can kill them. Or I mean,
mm-hmm.
but I mean, there's hell. I remember when I was in high school, they found a big American croc in uh, Lake Keystone.
Really,
Yes,
in
a
Keystone,
big American croc. Yeah.
what?
Or no, I'm sorry, it wasn't Lake Keystone. It was Lake Tarpon. They found it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That makes a little bit more sense. A little bit more south.
Well, not much more south. I mean, I used
Yeah,
to go Keystone. I used to go Keystone Road out to take Keystone Road out past Lake Keystone right into Lake Tarpon.
well, really,
It
I
was like
didn't realize it was that
yeah, it was
close.
like due west. Yeah,
Huh? That's crazy. I mean, they have
but
started to migrate north more. They're starting to get their population back, which is good.
but I think they found a 12 plus footer in Lake Tarpon.
I think when I went down to Miami last year on my birthday, I saw 9 individual wild American crocodiles, and I think the biggest one I saw was probably about 11 to 12 foot.
Yeah, which I mean is a big crocodilian, but when you look at it next to a 13-foot American alligator,
And I
alligator,
mean, I saw Maximo at the alligator farm, which is a damn near 16-foot saltwater crocodile on pretty much a daily basis. So,
yeah,
like, it's not that
but
that's not a big crocodile, but I, unlike a lot of people, I'm a little bit more realistic when it comes to judging sizes and being impressed by
yeah,
the size of a crocodilian.
well, well, and that's I mean, not that we're on topic anymore at all, but
Yeah,
like
we'll get back to it.
you look at like, and that's the most impressive thing about a an alligator, right? So alligator what maxed out at 14, 15 foot,
Mm-hmm.
but how massive is an alligator?
They're so bulky.
Yeah, so they're huge and like just massive animal. So they'll outweigh crocs, but
Yeah,
they just don't have the same. I mean, they're puppy dogs when it comes like in comparison. They're puppy dogs
yeah. Their
versus a croc.
personalities are so much more calm and relaxed than the crocodiles.
Yeah.
But all right, let's get back on topic. Let's all right. Let's talk about quarantine. What are your
Oh,
steps of quarantine? Well, because it varies for every animal. Let's do. You get a brand new monitor, wild caught. It's a hatchling that's going in a 4x2x2 enclosure. What are your steps for quarantining this? We'll say Asian water monitor.
um, first step is when I first get it, um, you put it in a tub with a lid and you soak it.
Yep.
Number one, right when you get it, you soak them. Potentially, I mean, depending on how it looks, is, do I do electrolyte soak or not?
Mm-hmm.
If it's on the skinnier side, electrolyte soak it. If it's looks good, still soak it because you don't know how long it hasn't had water for. So soak it with or without electrolytes. Um, don't soak it in RO water, whatever you do. Just get the Reptisafe drops, put that in the water, just kill the chlorine out of it because RO water can actually rob nutrients from the animal. So never use RO water on your animals that are brand new. When you know what they're eating and all that stuff, then you can start switching to RO water.
Mm-hmm.
But and never use deionized water for anything that's not a fish tank.
Interesting.
Never. Because it will deionize water because it has its true zero total dissolved solids. It will rob all the nutrients out of their body.
Oh, damn.
So that's why you use it in fish tanks and not in not drinking, not anything. Like if you drink a glass of deionized water, it will literally give you the Hershey Schwartz.
Well, shit.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's my Culligan training for you. So electrolyte soak. Put it in a new cage and leave it there pretty much dark for a day. Leave it in there dark. That's why I like the deep heat projectors. You can still have it heated. It'll stay warm. Deep heat projectors over ceramic heat emitters all day long. After it's been in there for a day, I mean, you can offer it food. It probably won't eat, especially being a monitor. It's just like, I'm not going to eat, not going to do anything. Let it chill out. Let it acclimate to its new enclosure. After a day, turn on some lights. Watch it. Let it know who you are. Never, ever, ever have the tank or the enclosure on the ground.
Yeah,
keep it at eye level.
That's a big factor.
Keep it at eye level or where you have a chair that they can see you and know who you are. They'll be hiding from you. Offer it small food, like especially if it's an Asian water monitor. Day-old quail, depending on size, cut it up or just leave it whole. Put some vitamin, like multivitamin on it, like you know the powdery multivitamin.
Yeah.
Put that on there. Leave the room. Turn off all lights, except for the lights on the enclosure.
Now,
leave the room. Let it eat.
Now, are you injecting Panicure into that, or are you waiting until you see signs of parasites, or how do you go about that? Do you go to a vet when you do?
My biggest thing is I want to make sure they're eating first. Make sure they're eating on a regular basis, and make sure the stress level has gone down in the animal before doing anything.
How long is too long of not eating for you?
It depends on what the animal looks like. It really truly depends on what the animal looks like.
Yeah, I like to say that as well. Like, it may be 2 weeks, it could be 3 weeks, could be a month, but unless the animal starts dropping body weight, that's when I start to worry.
Correct. If their tail base starts to get thin, that's when you need to interject. If you're getting wild caught animals, or if you have any kind of issues with anything, you can buy a thing. I forget what the exact name is of it. I sent it to you, that pinky syringe.
Yeah.
You literally load it up with thawed pinkies, and you can inject into their mouth, in the corner of their mouth, you can inject pinkies in there, and they'll eat it. It's not for the faint of heart, but it can be the difference between life and death. For the animal. If it is eating on a regular basis and it keeps weight, I actually won't treat it with Panicure until it's been in possession for probably 6 months.
Yeah.
I know that seems crazy, but at least that point, you are gaining the trust with the animal. You are gaining all of this stuff. You're letting the stress level go down from the animal, and that's when you can you can start doing other things. I also I know a lot of people that'll say on a brand new animal they'll put it on paper towels, newspaper, things like that. I'm not going to do that. Weekly soaps, things like that go a long way.
Mm-hmm.
That way, if they poop in the water, because the water will break up the poop, you could potentially see some parasites that way, or worms or
Yeah.
anything like that. You can kind of see anomalies in the poop. Um, so usually about 6 months, that's when I'd say inject a little bit of Panicure, see how it goes, and as long as the animal's packing on weight or keeping a sustained weight, I don't see a need to do anything
So
because
after about 6 months, you're taking them out of quarantine if they're doing good and all that.
I mean, me personally, I would keep them in quarantine for an elongated period of time as long as they're doing well. Like if they're doing well at 6 months, maybe 8 months, pull them out of quarantine.
Okay.
Um, if they're thin when they come in, and I know they have parasites. I mean, you want to make sure that animal is gaining weight, staying at a consistent weight, weighing that animal often, and verifying. The best thing you can have with wild caught animals is get yourself a composition notebook
Yeah.
and write down everything you see.
Are you taking
Because
it? So, like at this point, you know it has parasites. Are you taking it to the vet, or what are you doing there? You could say no. I'm not gonna judge you. Like I completely understand. I don't take my animals to the vet that often.
I, unless something, and unless they aren't gaining weight after a treatment of a slight treatment of Panicure, or maybe a couple treatments of Panicure,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not gaining any weight and it's not getting any better, that's when I'll take it to a vet.
Okay.
Unless it's not showing signs of improvement over if it's if so you get them, it's the animal's eating, the animal's pooping, the animal's drinking, and it's still not gaining weight after Panicure after a month or so, but it's still eating and pooping and all that stuff, then yes, absolutely a vet visit
Mm-hmm.
is a necessity. But if you treat it with Panicure over that course of a month and it is gaining weight, there's no reason. But if
Yeah.
it's not gaining weight and not showing improvements, then because the big problem is too with something that's still new to being in an enclosure and all that stuff, going in there, grabbing it out, taking it to the vet when it's already unhealthy,
That's a lot of stress.
it's too much stress to the point where it could kill your animal.
Yeah.
So why would you want to? And that's where it's tough. And plus, you have to know you have a very good reptile vet
Yeah.
because there's some vets offices that yeah we work on exotic animals and don't know anything about exotic animals.
Yeah, I'm lucky to be where I'm at. There's lots of different options of vets I can go to. Like, there's probably a good 6, 7 vets in within an hour, 2 hours of me that are actually good and knowledgeable on reptiles.
Yeah, and I had when I lived in Tampa, I had one of the best reptile vets I've ever met,
Yeah.
and that was Dr. Tony, and he's right there just north of Tampa. He's actually not far from where Rob is.
Well, I'm going down there Saturday.
Yeah, Dr. Tony. He used to have a office in on Northdale Mabry. Um, I wish I remember what the name of his office was. I just know he's Dr. Tony. but he's an exotic animal vet, and he's actually in Lutz, Florida. But when I worked at the pet store, whenever we had anything, we'd take him to Dr. Tony, and he'd
Yeah.
hook us up. I also sold him all of his feeders and stuff too, so
Oh, that's awesome.
he would take care of us pretty good on our animals, and we'd take care of him on his feeders.
Yeah. I definitely think if you are going to dabble in the import game, you got to touch up on your vet knowledge. Like you got to learn the medication treatment yourself, and you gotta find a local vet. You gotta
Yep.
find a vet that you can drive to or online consult with or something, because no matter how good you are, and there will be an animal that you get that's imported, and you will need to
Yeah.
take that animal to the vet.
No, yeah. I mean, and help with any of your animals, wild caught or captive bred.
Yeah,
There's going to be a point in time where you are going to have to take your reptile to the vet.
yeah, 100%.
It's
You
it's
should
going to
not.
hurt itself. It's going to do something. You're going to get a burn. You're going to get something.
The amount of
And
people that I know that keep reptiles. So like I know a bunch of people that have like one or two reptiles, but they're normal people. They take their animals to the vet, no problem. They don't mind. They get their animals to the vet. They treat it like a dog. They care for this animal. But then you get into
yeah,
these people that love reptiles and they have more than 10 fucking animals and they've never taken their animal to the vet. They've maybe taken it once or twice because they bought an animal and it looked sick and they wanted to get it checked out. But like, why are you not doing daily checkups or like yearly checkups on your animals? Like, I know it's a little hypocritical because I haven't really done this in the past, but I mean, within the past few months, we've started doing checkups on our animals, and I've
yeah.
been loving it, and I think it's something that everyone should do. I mean, you got
Well,
to.
yeah. And I'm also and I'll be the contrarian to that because it's like again, if I see that everything's healthy, everything's eating, everything's looking good, like even with my dogs, when it comes down to it, the only thing I can't do for my dogs is give them a rabies vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only thing I can't do for my dogs.
So how often do you
So
gotta do that? Once a year?
yeah, you just go to the vet and say, hey, or not even the vet, you just go to one of the low cost clinics and go, I need a rabies vaccine, $10, thank you.
And they usually do like a basic health check then too, right?
Um, yeah, they'll get their weight and everything
So,
and
and that's
whatnot.
still like still then that's still once a year. I can
Yeah,
name 5 people that I know personally that that I don't know if I've ever taken an animal,
I
a
don't know.
reptile as a.
I I don't know. I kind of lost a lot of faith in vets when I was in high school and my parents bought me a bloodhound,
Mm,
right? And he was a fully registered bloodhound, all this stuff, and they're like, you should really get your dog neutered. I'm like, no. Well, he's got a higher risk of testicular cancer if he's not neutered. I was like, well, that would make sense because if he didn't have testicles, he could not get testicular cancer.
yeah.
So, of course, he would have an immensely higher rate of testicular cancer if he had his testicles than if he didn't.
Yeah.
Like, that's your argument?
I'm
Well,
not. I'm definitely not gonna sit here and say every vet's good, especially with the exotic animals. 90%
oh,
of them aren't good. But if you're owning, if you have 10 plus reptiles, you should be putting in the work to find a good local vet.
yep. And don't, if you have to call a vet's office and they don't, or if you look at a vet's office and they don't say that they work on exotic animals, and then you call them and ask if you can bring your animal there, and they say, "Oh, we have a vet that deals with that." Just don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Because I had to bring a bearded dragon in one time, and this guy's like, "Oh, well, that's a nice water dragon you got there." I'm like,
Time to
"Yeah,
leave.
it's a bearded dragon. I'm gonna leave now." And then they tried to charge me. I was like, "I'm not paying you guys when you guys didn't even know what kind of animal I had."
Yeah.
Like,
Screw that.
really?
Screw that.
And that's another thing. Don't ever use calcium sand.
Yeah, do not.
It is not good. No matter what they say, it's not good.
Nope, it is not.
Impaction happens.
I mean, before we end this episode, is there anything else we want to cover? Talking about captive born and bred, wild caught, farm bred, long term captive. There's definitely a
Long-term
lot of
captive.
stuff we probably missed, but I don't know.
Yeah, there's just there's so much when it comes to it. I mean, and and I'll even go as far as this. Like my don't buy if you're not an experienced keeper, don't buy wild caught.
Yep.
Um, if you have if there's not a species that you can find that is captive bred, do all your research. Get within the local community, talk to people, see what kind of insight they can give you. If you want a Nile monitor, I guarantee you there's another monitor that's probably almost as cool, if not. Well, there's not really many monitors that are as cool as a Nile monitor, but there's probably something that comes close that's for one not as aggressive, and it's probably captive bred. And
Wait.
it's a
Can
lot
we
more.
rewind for a second? Did you just say there's not a lot of monitors as cool as a Nile?
There's not there. What I yeah. There's
What?
Nile monitors are probably the coolest monitor there is out there.
Really? You think that?
Oh yeah,
Over croc
absolutely.
monitors, parentes, komodos, Asian water monitors, celebensis,
Parentes are different. Parentes are different.
mertens.
Komodos are different. Look, Mertens are cool because they're like scaly river otters. But when it comes to like just really awesome look of a monitor, you get like all the cool things that you get in an Asian water monitor.
Like
You can
what?
get like the paddle tail, the the colorations and all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. You can get that in a Nile, and it's in a smaller package. Not much smaller, but a smaller package. You get that big, awesome African monitor head on a Nile that you don't get in an Asian water monitor.
I guess. I
I
don't
mean,
know. That's a hot take. I know you like your Niles, but
I do love my Niles, and everybody's like, "Why do you love your Niles?" I said, "Because they're arguably the coolest."
so would that be your favorite species of monitor?
The only species, it's my favorite species of monitor that I don't have access to currently.
That's a good answer.
I mean, I already told you that there's one coming. I just got to wait for the people that are getting rid of it to drop it off. So
Exciting.
it's happening. There is a Nile that is going to be coming. Um, but no, yeah, the Nile, and I guess the other thing that I like so much about Niles is what what other monitor species has the cojones enough to go run into a Nile crocodile's nest.
Crocodile monitors. They do it with salties. They do it with salties.
I I don't know. I think that a Nile crocodile is more angry than a salty.
Nah. Oh, I don't want to get into this, man. I just started a war on Facebook. I'm not even. I legitimately started a war on Facebook because of the Nile versus Salty debate, and I'm not about to
I
have that
mean,
debate on
don't get me wrong.
camera.
Don't get me wrong. A salty is a much more badass animal.
I
Like
think they're
all
both
in all,
cool, but I'm just tired of seeing that fucking debate. I think there's so many other species of crocodile that should be talked about. I know in this instance it's so different, but this war
well,
started like I was in. It's like I think it's the biggest crocodilian Facebook group, and 90% of the posts are all Niles are bigger and more mean, and then all the comments are no,
Oh
salties
no,
are.
salt, there's no doubt about it, and I'm not. I mean, I'm not trying to debate it. Salties are the biggest crocodile. Period.
100%.
Period.
Mm-hmm.
Attitude wise,
Philippines are the
attitude
worst.
wise. Oh well,
Between the two, between the two.
between the two, I think that attitude wise and the prey that they take down, there is nothing more impressive than a Nile crocodile.
I think, I don't know. I think with at least with my experience, salties are more aggro. But
You
that's just
think?
my experience. The Niles at the place I worked were relatively relaxed compared to Maximo was a complete dickhead and will try and kill anybody that enters that enclosure. Um, Now, like the Niles were definitely aggro towards each other. Um, I don't know. I think it just depends. I mean, I think that argument can go 50-50. I think fifty
Yeah,
percent of
definitely.
Niles can be more aggro than salties, and the other, and vice versa.
Yeah, my thought process behind the whole thing is thinking about in the wild. What has the opportunity to eat bigger
Buffalo.
land dwelling prey?
Well, like you say that, but Salty's main diet in Australia is those big ass cows. So I mean, that's almost equivalent to like the buffalo.
I mean, a Cape buffalo.
I think
It's a
I don't
big
know.
freaking thing.
I don't know how big a Cape buffalo is compared to like a big bull cow.
Well, I mean, I also know that Niles will take out baby elephants too,
Yeah, that's true. And then, like I mean,
and
they'll both fuck a
and
human up. I'll tell you that much.
and Niles have a bigger problem than Salties do.
What do you mean?
Fucking hippos.
Yeah, Niles do have to deal with that pose. Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
true.
yeah. I mean, Salty's got to deal with a great white shark every now and again, but
They
not
don't have to
live in
deal
the
with
same
hippos.
waters. Not live in the same waters as freaking hippopotamus.
Yeah, I
So,
never thought about that.
but uh, but no, Nile monitors. I don't know. There's something about them that's cool. Um, they have like all the cool things from all the different monitor species. Um, so it's like every cool aspect of every monitor species wrapped into one single species.
Yeah, I can understand that take.
Yeah,
Can't say I agree with it, but I can understand it.
man. Yeah.
Um,
So,
well, I guess with
but
that, I guess that will wrap up episode 7. I mean, we talked about Wild Caught and Captive Born and Bred, and then we started rambling about a bunch of other stuff. But
well, that's what we do here. I
yeah, it's
mean,
part of this podcast. Y'all gotta get used to it.
if it hasn't happened by now, then I don't know when it's going to happen. But
Well, I hope you
so
all enjoyed listening to this episode, watching it. Hopefully the video worked this episode. Sorry about the video last week's episode. I know it was audio only, but hopefully this one works. And if you guys enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe.
absolutely, guys, and I promise I won't miss another episode.
Sweet, yeah, we're gonna nonstop from here on out. Every Saturday, guys. We're gonna stick
Every
to it no
Saturday.
matter what. No matter if I have to
All
spend
right.
the 8 hours straight grind editing right before I have to upload the podcast, it will happen. They will go up every Saturday.
We'll get it done for you guys. All
I'm
right, guys.
thinking
Thanks a lot for listening.
I'm thinking maybe for episode 10, maybe we can play with the idea of going live.
Hey, I'm down.
Maybe we can do a live stream.
Might have to be a little later.
Yeah,
Saturday.
it'll have to be. It'll definitely be later, but Saturday, probably Saturday evening or something like that.
Maybe episode 10 we might be able to get a special guest on too.
Yeah, definitely. I think we can make that happen.
Yeah. See what we can do.
All right, yeah, and like always, if you guys have any feedback, leave it in the comments below. Any guests you want us to bring on, let us know.
or even if you might want to be a guest.
Yeah, if
Let
you
us
want to
know.
come on, if you're breeding any sort of exotic animals, not just reptiles, and you honestly don't have to be breeding. If you're keeping some cool shit, you got some cool stories, some cool experience with the animals, hit us up, man. We're always looking for guests, people to shit talk with, and just fuck around with and have fun on the podcast.
Yeah, man. Sounds good.
All right,
All
we'll see
right. We'll
y'all
catch you
next
guys
time.
next time.